Within an hour of the Shrek 5 trailer dropping, the internet had already decided. AI generated, this doesn't look like Shrek anymore, comments calling for DreamWorks to pull it back like Paramount did with Sonic. People who haven't thought about Shrek in a decade suddenly devastated by what they were seeing. The discourse moved fast, and it moved in one direction, and by the time most people saw the trailer, the verdict had already been delivered before they even pressed play. And I get it. I understand the reaction, but I think the reaction is wrong. And I think it's wrong in a specific way that says more about us than it does about the trailer. So let me make the case that everyone hated the Shrek 5 trailer for reasons that have almost nothing to do with whether the film is going to be good. Let's start with the thing everyone keeps saying, because it's the thing that needs addressing first. The whole thing looking AI generated. That phrase appeared in many of the comments on Twitter within the first hour, and it's worth asking what people actually mean when they say it. Because if you look at the trailer carefully, the animation is not AI generated. DreamWorks is one of the most technically sophisticated animation studios in the world. The characters move with intention. The lighting is complex. The environments have depth and detail that generative AI cannot currently produce at this quality level. So why does it feel that way to so many people? Because AI generated has become the language we use for something specific, content, that hits all the surface markers of the thing we love, without capturing the feeling of it. It's not a technical description, it's an emotional one. And the fact that thousands of people reached for the same word tells you something real about what they're experiencing. But it doesn't tell you that the trailer is actually bad. It tells you that the trailer looks different from what they remember. And looking different from what you remember is not the same thing as being bad. Here's the thing about Shrek that people seem to have forgotten in the 16 years since the last film came out. Shrek was never supposed to look good. The original film's aesthetic was built on purposeful ugliness. The characters were lumpy and asymmetrical because the joke, the actual foundational joke of the entire franchise, was that this was a fairy tale world where the beautiful people were the villains and the ugly people were the heroes. The visual language of the original films was doing satirical work. It was ugly on purpose to make a point about beauty. But here's what happens over 16 years. The thing that was purposefully ugly becomes the beloved familiar thing. And then when it changes, the change feels like a betrayal, even when the change makes sense. The original Shrek looked weird and wrong compared to other animated films of its time. We just forgot that, because we grew up with it. We normalized the weirdness, and now it's the new version that feels weird, because it doesn't match our normalized memory. That's not the trailer failing. That's nostalgia, doing what nostalgia always does. It convinces you that the version of the thing you encountered first is the correct version of the thing. The kids look AI generated is the specific complaint I want to spend some time on, because it's the one I find most revealing. Shrek and Fiona's children are older in this trailer. They're not the babies from the end of Shrek the Third. They've grown, and they look different from how people imagined they would look, different from the visual language of the characters people remember, smoother and more contemporary in their design. And some of you hate it, and I get it. But think about what people are actually asking for when they say the kids should look more like the original Shrek characters. They're asking for children of an ogre to look like the ogre did in 2001. They're asking for the visual aesthetic of a 24-year-old film to be preserved, unchanged, in a sequel. They're asking for stasis, and the entire emotional argument of the Shrek franchise was always against stasis. Shrek's whole arc across 4 films was about a character who was desperately trying to preserve the exact moment he was most comfortable in, and learning repeatedly that life doesn't allow that. The characters are supposed to look different. They've aged. The world has moved on. The visual language has evolved. That's not a failure of the new film. That's the new film being honest about the fact that time has passed, which is exactly what the original films asked Shrek to be honest about. The Sonic comparison that keeps coming up is actually instructive here, but not in the way people are using it. The original Sonic design that caused the backlash was wrong, because it was genuinely anatomically disturbing, in a way that had nothing to do with stylistic evolution. It had human teeth. It had unsettling proportions that violated the internal logic of the character. The response wasn't nostalgia, it was a legitimate aesthetic problem that Paramount correctly identified and fixed. Shrek's kids don't have human teeth. They look like animated children who who exist in the same world as their parents, but rendered with contemporary tools. That is a completely different situation, and conflating the two is the kind of thing that happens when a negative consensus forms fast, and people stop looking at what's actually in front of them. Here's what I actually see in the trailer that people seem to be overlooking in the rush to deliver a verdict. Shrek is older, he looks tired in a specific way. The film is set after everything, after the happily ever after the swamp and Fiona, and the kids, and the whole life he built. And the premise appears to be Shrek and Donkey going somewhere new. Now I've seen people read that as lazy adventure plotting. I read it differently. A middle-aged Shrek leaving the life he built and going somewhere unfamiliar is the exact premise that the psychology of this character demands. The Arrival Fallacy video we made argued that Shrek got everything he wanted and still wasn't happy because external destinations can't produce internal peace. The logical continuation of that story is a Shrek who has lived inside the happy ending for years and is starting to feel the hedonic adaptation set in, the restlessness returning, the sense that the swamp, which was supposed to be the answer, has become its own kind of trap. If the film is actually exploring that, and I think there's reason to believe it might be, then the big city adventure is not the story. It's the container the story is being delivered in, which is exactly how the original films worked. The Rescue the Princess plot wasn't the story of the first film either. The story was underneath it the whole time. I could be wrong. The trailer might be showing us exactly what the film is, but the people saying it's definitely bad based on 90 seconds of footage are just as likely to be wrong as I am, and their certainty arrived suspiciously fast. I want to address the kid-friendliness concern because it's come up, and it's worth taking seriously. Some people watching the trailer felt that certain elements weren't appropriate for younger audiences, and I think that's a fair observation about specific moments. But here's the thing about the original Shrek films that people have selectively forgotten. They were not especially kid-friendly either. The original film had jokes aimed squarely at adult audiences layered underneath the surface content that kids were watching. The fairy tale satire was adult. The commentary on celebrity culture in Shrek 2 was adult. The fairy godmother's manipulation of Harold was a genuinely dark psychological portrait. Pinocchio's underwear subplot, the entirety of what the gingerbread man goes through. These films were always operating on two levels simultaneously, and the adult level was never particularly sanitized. The new film appears to be doing the same thing. The Donkey Jim joke is aimed at adults. The kids in the audience will not know what a badonkadonk is and will not care. They'll be watching whatever visual gag accompanies it. The dual audience approach was always part of what made these films work for families, something for everyone in the room, and there's no evidence from the trailer that this has changed. The difference is that the adult humor of the original films is now nostalgically beloved, and the adult humor of the new film feels inappropriate because it's unfamiliar. That's the same dynamic playing out again. Nostalgia, making the familiar feel correct and the new feel wrong. The original Shrek was released in 2001. The people making this new film were not trying to recapture 2001. They were trying to make a 2025 film that carries forward what these characters mean while existing in the present moment. Those are not the same goal, and conflating them is how you end up with a film that feels like a museum exhibit rather than a living story. Characters are supposed to age. The visual language of animation is supposed to evolve. Humor is supposed to speak to the moment it's made in. These are not signs of a film losing its soul. These are signs of a film trying to exist in the present rather than cosplay as the past. And here is the part that I think gets closest to what I actually want to say. The soul of Shrek was never in the specific texture of his skin, or the particular jokes Donkey told, or the visual style of 2001 CGI. The soul of Shrek was in what the films argued, that the people the world decided didn't fit deserved a story, that happy endings were more complicated than the fairy tale version, that choosing someone imperfect over and over was harder and more real than being chosen because you were perfect. That argument doesn't require any particular animation style to survive. It doesn't require Donkey to make the same kind of jokes he made in 2001. It doesn't require the film to look like something made 24 years ago. It requires the film to care about something real and to use the characters to say it. Nothing in the trailer proves the film doesn't care about something real. What the trailer proves is that it looks different from what people remember, and right now, Different feels like wrong, but different and wrong are not the same thing. They never were. The original Shrek understood that better than any film of its time. It would be genuinely ironic if the response to its sequel proved that the audience learned nothing from it. The loudest voices online right now are the people who decided in the first 60 seconds that the film is bad. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that those people are doing to the new Shrek exactly what Farquaad did to the fairy tale creatures, seeing something that doesn't fit the approved image and deciding before they've given it a fair hearing that it needs to go. The honest response is to notice that you might be reacting to something other than the actual trailer. That 16 years of memory and affection and psychological projection have built an impossible standard. And also, that the characters aging and the animation evolving and the humor updating are things the original Shrek would have asked you to be okay with. But all you need to do is follow the story and see where it goes. Then you can decide.